In the mid-1930s, Austrian federal railways found themselves in need of engines capable of handling a variety of light passenger work, such as light expresses, fast suburban services, and running branch lines. Alexander Lehner, who was the head of the railway's design department, came up with a machine capable of doing the work. And while they weren't the most powerful passenger tank engines to work in Austria, they were perhaps some of the most unique looking. To ensure the engines could run both forwards and backwards without issue, they were given a 2-4-2 wheel arrangement with the cab set close to the middle. They were fitted with 1,450mm driving wheels, two 290 by 570mm cylinders, Lentz-type valve gear, side tanks measured in at 11.2 meters long and weighed 34 tons, becoming 44 tons when fully readied for service. The cab was raised slightly and fully enclosed, not only making it more comfortable for the driver, but also giving them a much better view when travelling. And despite its size, the boiler was fairly powerful, being fitted with a superheater and capable of producing 260 psi. Other features included steam carriage heating equipment, adjustable suspension on the driving wheels allowing the driver to adjust the axle load between 11 and 13 tons, and a luggage compartment set behind the engine's bunker. The square shape of the luggage compartment combined with the similarly shaped water tanks and cladding around the boiler on top of the raised enclosed cabs gave the engines a unique, diesel-esque appearance. 10 were built in 1935, and to further compare them to diesels, they were all oil-fired so that the engines only needed one man to operate them. Classed as DT1s, they were put to work on light expresses and pulling suburban trains around Vienna, where they proved to not only be reliable, but quick too, some managing to clock a top speed of 100 km an hour. Despite essentially being individual tank engines, the DT1s were technically classified as rail motors due to their luggage compartments. And while it may seem strange to have a separate compartment for parcels and luggage on the locomotive instead of in a carriage, the practice wasn't unusual to see on smaller suburban or lighter branch line services in Austria, Germany and Switzerland. As well as suburban use, the DT1s also frequently worked along branch lines, often in more rural areas. They were usually positioned in the middle of most trains in a pendlar formation, or a push-pull configuration as we better know it, saving the need to run around trains at stops. Their odd appearance, likely combined with their position in the middle of trains instead of the front, eventually led to them getting the nickname of Dorftrottel, meaning village idiot in English. By 1938, another 10 had been built, bringing the total DT1s to 20. However, these were built to burn coal instead of oil after it was found oil was too expensive, with the original 10 later converted to burn coal too, the railway figuring it'd be more cost effective to just hire a fireman and forego the whole one-man operation thing than fork out for oil. Not much is written on how well they performed, as they were only in service for a few years before they came under the ownership of the Deutsche Reichsbahn after the annexation of Austria by Germany. Reclassified as 71.5s, they were moved to the Munich East Depot and Rosenheim Depot where they continued to work light expresses and suburban trains. On top of these duties, they were also employed as carriage heating engines. Thanks to Germany's takeover of Austria and other countries, their railway network ended up catering to a large mix of rolling stock. Often electric locomotives would find themselves pulling carriages with steam heating, and since they didn't have the correct apparatus to heat the carriages, the 71.5s would be attached at the rear of the train to do the job. And since they could comfortably run at 100 km an hour, there was no worry of overworking them and wearing out components. 2 were damaged during the Second World War, leaving Austria with 18 once the engines were returned home after the fighting was over. Once home, they found themselves all over the railway network, working suburban, rural and light express services again, eventually being reclassified once more as 307.1s in 1953. Afterwards, the engines had a fairly quiet career, the only notable exception being engine number 307.115, which derailed and fell down an embankment in 1963. Withdrawals began around the same time, and by 1968 all had been taken out of service. Luckily, one was preserved, this being DT107. It was restored to working order in 1993 and has since been a common sight at the Austrian Railway Museum. Designing engines to pull lighter expresses and suburban services is a tricky thing as they need to be compact, powerful and lightweight. This has led to the creation of many different locomotives, but few might be as strange in appearance as the DT1s. Despite the odd looks, however, they proved themselves to be more than reliable machines. And I think it goes to show that just because something has a reputation as an idiot, doesn't necessarily make it one. Subscribe for more.